I'd like to talk about the Christian baker who refused to bake a cake because of a demand that it be a cake celebrating a gay wedding. But it's not the baker you're thinking about. You're thinking about the baker in Colorado. What was his name, honey? Jack Phillips. Jack Phillips is his name. But I'm actually talking about a similar case in California involving a woman. Her name is Kathy Miller, and she runs a bakery called Tastries Bakery in Bakersfield, California. Now, she had been approached to design a custom cake for a wedding ceremony, and this is actually Kathy Miller in 2017, quote, "Here at Tastries, we love everyone. My husband and I are Christians. We know God created everyone. He created everyone equal. So it's not like we don't like people of certain groups. There's just certain things that violate my conscience." So, by the way, her position very similar to the position of Jack Phillips in Colorado. But Kathy Miller gets sued by California's Department of Fair Housing and Employment. This was under something called the Unruh Civil Rights Act of 1959, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, or religion. Now pause for a moment, because here you have a civil rights law, which is basically supposed to protect people from being discriminated against on the basis of race, or ethnicity, or, you guessed it, religion. And what's going on here? Kathy Miller is being discriminated against or being targeted, or in this case, it is being demanded of her that she go against her own religious beliefs and her own conscience and say something that she really doesn't want to say. So, as far as I can see, this civil rights law doesn't deal with sexual orientation, doesn't deal with the gay issue at all, but it is invoked in the kind of way in which you start with the Civil Rights Act, it's about race, then other issues from gender to sexual orientation are sort of piggybacked onto it, which were not necessarily conceived in the original legislation. Anyway, this goes before Judge Eric Bradshaw of the Superior Court of California, and the judge rules on the side of Kathy Miller. Basically says, no, she doesn't have to be forced to make a cake. And now, what I find interesting is that the Thomas More Society, which defended Kathy Miller in this case, said that when she was having her deposition by the state of California, they tried to basically go into all this stuff about her religious beliefs. They would say things like, well, you claim that homosexuality is against the rules as far as the Bible goes. Do you follow the dietary laws of the Old Testament? Do you believe in stoning like they did in the Old Testament, and so on? Now, obviously, first of all, there's a difference between the Old Testament and the New. This is all part of Christian teaching and Christian history. The intention here is not to really clarify Kathy Miller's views so much as to suggest that she is being selective and hypocritical in her views, that she sort of doesn't really believe Christian teaching, even though, as the Thomas More Society points out, Kathy Miller's views are in the mainstream of Christian beliefs on the subject. Now, you might think, wait a second, didn't Jack Phillips in Colorado go before the Supreme Court? Didn't he win his case? Why are we even talking about this? Well, turns out that the Supreme Court in the Jack Phillips case did not address the fundamental issue of whether or not somebody can, in the name of religious conscience, not follow some sort of anti-discrimination law by saying, in a sense, that my First Amendment right trumps this state law or this local ordinance or this rule that is being put forward. The Supreme Court sort of didn't decide the broader issue. They simply decided the Phillips, that particular case. And that's the problem when the court decides a single case and doesn't establish, if you will, a broader rule of precedent, then you get more cases that begin to look exactly like the earlier case. And that seems to be what happened here. Fortunately, the judge, I think, saw that the writing was on the wall as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. And of course, this is a case where the First Amendment couldn't be more clear, which is to say that there is a protection, particularly a protection against the state of the right of religious conscience, and that is all that Kathy Miller in this case was trying to vindicate.